Welcome to the Cabin Fever Show 2019. It's our 5th annual and it's doing well. As you can see behind me, we got a few people hanging around, and we just had a pretty good rush come through. People coming in to enjoy our collectors. We got 16 different collections this year, which was a little bit less than last year, but they're different than what we had. So we're still having a good time. The Templeton Cultural Council came, and they're going to be supporting us a little bit more this year, which was really nice to hear. So we're growing, and we're hoping that this continues to be something that the community enjoys, because we're working on getting more people involved.
The life of a collector, it's a life of trauma and heartbreak, the agony, the ecstasy, the holy grail of fountain pens that you always wanted, and just to see the person ahead of you snag it instead. All seriousness, the life of a collector is pretty fun. It's a good thing to be able to find something that you really enjoy and like it, and going after that grail pen is actually really fun. I mean, everybody has a grail something. That one item for your collection that you feel once you get that item, your collection will be complete. So
there is agony and ecstasy.
There is agony and ecstasy, and I'm actually not sure if it's more fun to actually get your grail pen or to always be searching for whatever your grail is along the way. I don't know that it's more fun to have it. I think sometimes the search is its own reward. The answer is in the journey, absolutely.
So how do you like the Cabin Fever Show? It's our second year.
I love Cabin Fever. It's a huge amount of fun. I love having people come in and ask me about my collection and being able to tell them all sorts of things, and hopefully convert them to my way of thinking about fountain pens, and recruit people to our board here so that we've got more collectors out there. But I also love going around and seeing everybody else's collection. We've got somebody here who's collecting Pez, and they've got all these boxes of, Snow White, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and all they're missing, they need to have a Game of Thrones Pez dispenser set, and every third Pez is poisoned. And then that would really fit in with that zeitgeist. So it's wonderful seeing other people's hobbies and all of the things that they have and hearing from them as well. It's a great group of people.
And so this year I thought I'd do something different, and I decided to do my cobalt blue collection, which is really something that looks nice in the light. So I have it in my kitchen, and so when the sunlight shines through, it looks really nice in the window. But I've been collecting it since about 1980. The pieces come one at a time. Lots of them have been gifts over the years. But I just really love the way they look, and it matches well with my blue willow. So it just really is nice. I like the different shapes, some of the older time things, medicine type stuff. This one my sister-in-law found for me. It's a Phillips Milk of Magnesia bottle, which I thought was quite interesting because I remember Milk of Magnesia being an opaque sort of color, but this is see-through, and I like the cap on it. It was really cool. But most of them are for the dinner table. There's not a lot of them that I use for other purposes, but I use my blue stuff almost every single day. I have plates and I have cups and saucers. So it's really important for me when I collect things to use them. I think that...
What's it like being a collector of so many different things?
I think it's fun. I mean, it's a cheap, easy way to get some joy out of life. I think it's just a fun thing to do with your time, and it doesn't cost you very much, one piece at a time, and it's just an enjoyable way to use your things that you love.
Out of anything you collect, what's your favorite?
I love the blue the most, yeah. Everything has a purpose, but this just gives me joy every single day. It's just pretty to look at.
John, we've never seen so much Pez in our life. How did this come about?
Well, my first Pez, the Zorro, 7 years old, and the top are some of the ones I collected when I was around that age, 7 to 10. Then there was a lull till about the late 70s when I revisited it and started collecting, and it's turned into this. Originally, they only came out with 1 or 2 a year, so it was very sparse. Now they release up to 30 a year, depending on movie rights and licensing type of things. So you see the Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars.
How many Pez containers do you think you have?
At this collection here today, there's 1,000.
Is that your total collection?
That's I have a few more at home that are duplicates that have some variation. There are possibly another 400 that I don't have, believe it or not, that are harder to find. They're from the 70s, called rubber heads. There are some, Europe also releases their own, so does Japan and Canada. So there's different countries release different characters that are from that country. So they're a little harder to find.
But you find them?
I found some.
How do you find them?
Usually online, mostly from Canada. Shipping from Europe tends to be a little more expensive, so it's a little cost prohibitive.
And you've eaten all of this Pez?
Some of them, not all of them.
Now you have a family. Did your kids like to get Pez dispensers?
They've never actually gotten into it. I think they're just waiting to inherit mine.
There you go. What a fabulous collection.
Thank you.
What's it like being a collector and having this obsession with Pez?
Therapeutic.
Yeah?
I collect other things as well, so
Such
it's.
as?
There are actually, I have other candy dispensers. One's called Flicks, one is called Clicks. One dispenses Smarties, the other one dispenses gumballs. They're short companies, span maybe 60 dispensers on each, which I have. I didn't bring them today because it would have been a little harder to display. Stamps, coins, anything that catches my interest.
What's therapeutic about it?
It's enjoyable,
Yeah? Relaxing?
relaxing, the hunt to find them, usually at flea markets, yard sales, that kind of thing.
What's your favorite one?
I'd still have to go with the Zorro since it was my first. But they're all, together they're all very eye-appealing.
Do they
The
still
colors.
make them in all those kind of characters too?
No, usually when they do a year's run, you can't find them again unless you go on eBay or an online site. For instance, I usually like the Flintstones. You can't find them anymore unless you find them at a flea market or online, or any of the other ones actually. Now that I say that.
Nice. What a great collection to have.
Thank you.
How fun is that? Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, how do you like the show so far?
Very good. It's the first time I've been.
Yeah?
I saw it 3 years ago in the paper and wanted to do it, and just this year I was able to catch it in time.
Well,
So
thanks for being
yeah,
here.
I'll be
That's
here next year
Cool.
with something else.
All right. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
We now have 4 decades of Tonka. We have genres through the 1950s through the 1980s. We are starting out right here with a 1954 Tonka Green Giant tractor trailer. These vehicles are original American-made pressed metal steel vehicles built here in the original company of Mound Manufacturing in Mound, Minnesota, where Tonka got its very beginnings back in the late 40s, early 1950s. This truck, as you can see, has the original tires, rims, original paint in very fine to very fine condition. And in this generation, this is actually the second generation of Tonka tractor and trailer. You can see that you actually have metal headlights connected to a metal grille. Tonka had this format for the headlights through 1955. So notice you have no windshield, you have all metal. You even have back here, you have the original doors with the original handles, wooden floor, just like a real tractor trailer would have. And so this here even has the original mud flaps. In 1956, we went to a Tonka stake bed farm truck that would have originally had plastic horses, plastic cows, a ramp and a corral off the back of it. You now had, for the first time, plastic headlights, but notice there's still no windshield or interior cab. Tonka, continuing on, decided in 1957 that they were going to come out with a dump body style truck. Again, you now have, just like in 56, you now have a plastic headlight inside of a metal headlight casing, and then you have all the original metal. The paint's a little faded, but that's patina. There's no rust. It's the original paint, the original decals. And what's wonderful about this is you even have the original spring-load dump bed that still functions perfectly. Ford had the fat fender body style through 1957. In 1958, Ford went to a square body design. Hence, you not only have, you've gone from 2 to 4 headlights like the Ford had, but you now, for the first time, Tonka has installed a plastic windshield. This is just the early models where the very hint of plastic, but still an all-metal design, full steel toy, pressed metal, made at Mound Metalcraft, Mound, Minnesota. The design of the square body continued on basically through about, well, the rest of the generation in the Ford series. You had Fords such as this fire truck, which still has the hoses on it, and your other hoses. It comes with all the additional parts. These, again, had 4 headlights now instead of 2, the plastic windshields, and they continued through this 1963 tow truck, which this actually is missing what would have been a spare wheel right here and tire, but aside from that, everything else is intact. Again, these are all original paint, original decals, original parts, fully made in America, pressed metal steel toys. If you come over here, you shall see that in 1975, we actually have a Tonka ambulance, like you would have seen years ago in the old Rich's department store as an example. You know, you have the working roof, the working sliding door, and ironically, you also have the original action figures that came with it in the original clothes. The irony is, and I've joked with my friends about this, is that the gentleman on the gurney has a big smile on his face, so apparently he's receiving the proper medication for his accident. This ambulance I actually purchased from an original Tonka employee out of when he worked for Tonka, and he enjoyed, as you see the action figures falling down, he worked for Tonka out of Minnesota, and when he sold it to me, you can see the door still slides, all the parts function. The value of these is determined, do you have the original stickers? Do you have all the original parts? Does it work? Is it rusty? Is it the original paint? So I just recently picked up, this I got in the mail just for the show. This is a 1974 Tonka, complete with a mixer, in the original paint. It looks like it just came out of the box. Clearly some child had never gotten a hold of it. Now here's what's interesting. So on this particular Tonka, notice that you not only have a plastic windshield, but you have a plastic interior. Now, they went from the Ford series with Tonka to Dodge roughly circa 1968. So from 54 to roughly 67, you had Fords. And it was sometime around 67 to 68, you actually went from Ford to a Dodge. Dodge followed all the way up until roughly 1980 with Tonka. We had four decades of Tonka. We went from metal headlights and no cab glass of plastic to plastic headlights and still no windshield, to plastic headlights and plastic windshield, plastic headlights, plastic windshield, plastic interior, to then upper plastic and then half plastic. The biggest mistake anybody who collects American pressed metal toys, I can tell you, do not refurb them. Do not strip them and repaint them. You are diminishing the value of the toy. Leave them original. Don't touch them. You can either collect them for yourself, collect them to increase in value over the years, or give them to younger relatives in your family. Leave them original. Don't touch them, and you'll have years of enjoyment and collector value. And once again, it was great to be able to come here and show these for the Narragansett Historical Society.
Vintage sewing accessories, can you explain?
Well, sure. Most of these are attachments that go on your sewing machine that help you do some of the fancier sewing or some of the trickier bits. Most sewing machines come with kind of a basic assortment, and then there are a lot of fancy ones you can get. These are some of the extras, if you like. This one here you can use to make pleats or ruffles, which is a pretty tedious process if you're doing it by hand, but this makes it automatic. And it goes right on your sewing machine where the regular presser foot would go. And you can adjust, this piece shifts to adjust the depth and number of pleats if you're making pleats, or how close together your gathers are. The fabric feeds through here, and then this tongue goes chunk, 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 pushes it in and makes your pleat for you, stitches it down. The edge stitcher lets you put two fabrics together with a very narrow seam, like this lace. These are all just, the edges are butted together, and then you get a very narrow, fine seam with a flat fabric. You can use it to attach a piece of piping, and the rickrack is also attached with it. You can also use it to make pin tucks. So you have all these little folds in the fabric. And most of that is for decorative purposes. Your narrow hemmer makes very fine hems. This would be really tricky to do if you were trying to turn it yourself and press it and stitch it exactly. But the narrow hemmer just...
What's a shearing foot?
The shearing foot is, it's also called a gathering foot, and so it makes little gathers in your fabric. This makes a little ruffle by just going down the center and feeding it in. And you can also make rows of gathering. This is with different stitch lengths, so you can get tighter or wider gathers.
What's your favorite?
I really like the binder foot. It works really well. Some of these can be a little tricky to manipulate, but you can put a beautiful bias binding on a piece of fabric.
It basically provides the edging for you?
Well, you can buy pre-folded bias tape at sewing stores and feed it through, and it will apply it around the edge and stitch it down. Or you can make your own. You can cut a bias strip, and these pins act as a guide. And this scroll here folds it up, gets all the little folds you need, wraps it over the edge, stitches it down. So you can make it out of any fabric to match what you're making. And you can also sort of stitch it down flat. This is called a French fold. And it's just a piece of bias tape that's applied as a decoration. But you can go around curves with it because it stretches a little bit. It's just a really pretty easy edge for aprons and pocket edges and all sorts of things.
Now this is one part of your collection, right?
This is one part.
You collect older fashions as well?
Yeah, older patterns. I do a lot of costume design, so I'm always looking for historical fashion reference. And generally, I mean, there are a lot of different things here, but the guiding principle for things that I like to collect is, are they things I can use? So the Hug Snug is a rayon seam binding. Modern seam bindings are made of polyester, they're kind of stiff, but the rayon is really soft, and you can shape a curve with it. And it comes in tons of colors. It's still made. You can purchase it, online or whatever. But the vintage stuff comes in lots of pretty colors, and if I see a roll of it, I'll just grab it because I know I'll use it someday. But yeah, that's in general.
And you use some of those sewing machine accessories, so you still sew?
I still sew. This is a little scarf that I made with the edge stitcher.
Nice.
And it's just strips of vintage lace all abutted together. still a lot of things that are that it's easier and more effective to hand sew. I know there are historical sewers out there who make entire 18th century gowns by hand. No machines, just hand stitching, things like that. And in the way it would have been done. You do have a lot more control over what you're doing if you're hand sewing, but the sewing machine definitely speeds things up.
Well, for the last 50 years, Wednesday afternoons, same group of people. Many of them retired and most of them have since passed away. But we had no all-stars. We enjoyed each other's company. And so I enjoyed the game, but you get older and the ball doesn't go quite as far. So, but I've always liked golf memorabilia, and so that's why most of this has to do with golf. One man came by with his little boy, and I said, "Did you see Mr. Magoo?" And the little boy had no clue because Mr. Magoo is not, for a little boy that's our age. And I like watches and clocks. I got 2 or 3 there. And then Bob.
Golf ball, the evolution of the golf ball.
Yeah, that's original. That's what they used to look like when they started the game. And that's the kind of ball that most probably Bobby Jones played, that statue, that bronze statue is, yeah. Anyway, I enjoyed the game, and now it's time to give it up. 50 years is long enough. So yeah, but it was, enjoyed the camaraderie. That was the best part of golfing. Yeah.
Hey, it's the one game they say you can get better as you get older.
Well, I don't know. Wine you can do that, but I'm not sure about golf. So you don't hit it as far, and so you have to.
More accurate, right?
You have to be more accurate. You have to be able to putt. If you haven't got a good short game, you don't have a game. So, but it was fun while it lasted.
And these are all your friends?
These are a lot of the pictures of the people I played with, and many of them are gone. Like there's a picture there of Ray LaFontaine, a former state rep, Tom Carroll, judge, Sad Stromsky, accountant, Bob Latour, my dentist, Freddie Mellon, had a place in South Ashburnham. And that's only 4 or 5. There are a number of others. Joe Rome, he's no longer with us. And but they were all fun to play with, and we had good camaraderie. That was the name of it.
You're ready to go out and play 9.
No, at 86, I'm ready to give it up. Thank you.
Well, it was good too, right?
Yes, it was good for me, and I'm glad I played.
Nice.
See this? I sent in 3 of my business cards, and they made this from the business cards. And you can see, because my name and it's on the back.
Yeah. Who did it?
I don't know, it was advertised in the magazine 25 years ago. I don't remember.
That's a neat piece.
Yeah, all bought and paid for.
Tanner, tell us about your collection.
Well, I find these from behind my house in the dump.
Wow, I bet they're actually pretty valuable, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What do you like about collecting?
That you can learn about old things, like old history.
What have you learned about the bottles that you collect?
Bottles that I collect. I learn that they're super old. That they're super old.
Yeah?
And
Which one's your favorite? Why?
because it has that shape to it.
Do you think you're going to keep collecting bottles?
Yeah.
Yeah? And anything else? Do you do other collections?
I do coin collecting.
That's a good one, too. Pretty much money, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, how did you like showing your collection here at the Cabin Fever show?
It was good.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of people come by and
Yeah.
ask you about it? Good. You could meet a lot of people?
Yeah.
Good. Well, hey, we're glad to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tanner. So
I'm a
tell us
lifelong
about
collector,
the life
yeah.
of a collector.
Started back when I was 18 years old, and I got involved with doing watch repair with my grandparents, and I found that pocket watches were pretty much the coolest part of the industry. So I started collecting pocket watches. It soon turned into an obsession where I almost had to build a room big enough to hold all of the pocket watches that I have. So they're in safes, they're in safety deposit boxes, they're everywhere. But the joy of having the Cabin Fever Collector Show is that I can actually put them out on display and see them all in one place and get to see people's expressions. And we're talking about pieces that would normally be in a museum or in a very fine collection somewhere. So to get them out in the open, get them in the public, and people can actually pick them up and handle them, and they're just amazed. You know, they're holding a pocket watch that was running and being used when George Washington was our president. So we're going back to 1790, and it's still working, you know, thanks to a little bit of work that on my part. So that's just so rewarding to be able to see in my collection pieces that work and keep time. Started watchmaking at the age of 18, so I wasn't old enough to have a collection or to have any money to collect anything. But once I started fixing watches, I had a lot of them that people wouldn't pick up. They couldn't afford to pay me to repair them, so I ended up owning them. And the more I found in the collection, the more I enjoyed them, and the more found their way. They just find their way to my door, so I just keep adding to the collection, you know. Once in a while we sell one. They just don't make them like they used to, because nowadays everything is battery powered, and when it breaks down you throw it away and get another one. In my world, everything is old, so you just restore it, you make it work. So.
Last year you showed us pocket watches. Do you have anything?
Yeah, we've got a few of the complicated ones. I think I mentioned one last year which has a chime on it, so it tells you by cranking up a different section of the watch, it activates hammers, and the hammers ring a little steel rod that's built inside the pocket watch, and it chimes. So it'll ding a single ding for each hour, so you count how many single dings there are, and then it'll do a double ding, and that means quarter hours. So one double ding means it's quarter past, and then it'll count the single minutes after the quarter hour. So you add them all up and you'll know that it's 17 minutes past 2. So I can actually play it for you if you want to use that. So this one here, it says it's 6 minutes past 2. So I wind this part up. Two o'clock. Well, it's 5 minutes past 2. So it did 5. If it was quarter past or after that, it would have had a double ding. So this is a minute repeater, and it tells you exactly what time it is without lights. Middle of the night, you can just crank it up and you can tell what time it is. So that's one of the most collectible pieces you'll find on the market today.
How old is that?
This one's approximately 1890, maybe. I don't know if you can zoom in on that, but it's a very complicated watch. And these are the ones you usually find in museums. But all day people come in and they get to pick it up and hold it and check it out. So, and that's the best part about coming to our Cabin Fever show.